Hey Josh, welcome to Meet the Boss Junior. Today I'm speaking with Joshua Boyes, CEO of Arkahna. First question, you might know I love cars. What's your favorite car?
So that's an interesting one. So my favorite car would be the C1 Corvette. Specifically, it's a 1960 model. I actually used to have it was the very first poster I ever owned. It used to sit on above my bed. Yeah, all the way through until I left home. And it's actually, I found it the other day rolled up in the shed. I don't know how I've managed to keep it all these years.
Wow, that sounds like an amazing dream car. Next question. Think back to when you're a kid. What did you want to do when you grew up?
Um, from about the age of 4, I wanted to join the army, actually. And as soon as I was able to do so as soon as I was old enough, I did do that. I think luckily I also taught myself to code when I was about 8 or 9 years old and did that until I joined the army. So when I got injured, I had something to, fall back on many years later. It was, quite handy, to be honest.
Okay, I want to hear all about your work, but first tell me your story. How did you become a CEO?
Yeah, cool. It's actually not my first stint at being a CEO. I think for about in the last 20 years, this is probably my 6th company I've either founded or been a senior member of. But more recently, when starting Arkahna, when I left Microsoft, I kind of decided to have another go at it, even though I promised everyone else I wouldn't. And because I had a bit of a problem that I wanted to solve and a gap that I saw in my previous role. So I thought I'd just have a crack and do it again myself.
Okay, so tell me about your company. What is your product and who are your customers?
Yeah, cool. So Arkahna is quite an interesting company because on the surface, we look like a normal professional services business. However, we do operate more like a product company. So, if you're talking to more SaaS businesses, that's probably how we probably operate a lot more. But essentially, we cover modern apps and modern ways of working, but we've approached it totally differently. I basically threw the entire rulebook out the window and decided to create something that was quite unique to work in. It doesn't necessarily present very uniquely, but when you're in the company, everybody realizes how different it is. But at a super high level, we essentially productize all professional services. We build our own discrete products. We've got our own internal product team that we fund. And we also have productized our managed services as well. But our customers, you asked about our customers span the biggest customers in Australia, from the biggest banks and mining companies all the way down to not-for-profits and bootstrap startups. And luckily, our model actually scales 100% between those two different spectrums. We do have a bit of an industry focus, though. While we're a horizontal player across everything, our industry focus is definitely health, as well as digital businesses and SaaS sort of startups.
So what do you love most about your job?
Probably that would be having a vision and then seeing it execute successfully. I think that's probably the thing. It's actually quite, I don't know, it's quite exciting to know that you've got to be identifying a problem in the market and then building something that goes and addresses that. And then, like I said, actually seeing it thrive, but also, in this particular case, doing it faster and, better than we ever dreamed would be is quite, is quite amazing. I suppose, part of what we set out to do was to make a difference in some parts of what we do, and to actually do that. Yeah, that's probably what I love the most. Though I do also love the game. There's an element of competing that I'd missed a little bit or had a different angle on, so that's a bit of fun as well.
So what's the hardest thing about your job?
My hardest thing's probably more of a self-imposed stress than anything else. So I kind of take on board the stress of being responsible for so many people. So we've only been around 18 months, but we've grown really fast. So we have quite a lot of people. We've also taken a bit of investment along the way. So, I'm not only looking after people, I'm also looking after people's, money, essentially. And I'm also deliberately not a micromanager. So I do set a bit of a vision for my staff and, kind of tell them my vision. And then I don't really ever dictate how they need to get there. I like people getting there themselves, choosing their own path. But then I suppose a real hard thing is knowing when the difference between micromanaging and, course correction or validation. That's probably a fine line you have to drive in my sort of role.
So what does success look like to you?
I think success for me is about identifying a vision and then identifying that vision you want to set out to achieve and then actually doing so. For me, that's the most successful thing. So it doesn't matter how small or how big that is. It could be, it can be personal visions and goals. And I think achieving that for me is success. In saying that, you're not always successful in the traditional sense of the word a lot of the time. So sometimes it can be, you might actually technically fail at whatever you were setting out to do, but so long as you take something from that and learn, and then the next time you do it, you take that on board, I think that's pretty important. And for me, that's also can be another type of success. And I think about Arkahna is the learnings from doing this plenty of other times in the past and all the things that I liked and didn't like, and ultimately learning from that and ideally not repeating any of the same mistakes as we go forward.
So what's one piece of advice for me as I think about starting my own company?
I get asked this a lot because of the type of businesses I talk to. I talk to a lot of really early stage businesses. And usually the number one piece of advice I give is to surround yourself with people, either people that you can ask for advice or mentors. However, you seem to do that really well. I've been following this for a while, and I see that you do surround yourself with those types of people that you can ask advice from. So I'd say you've got that one ticked already. So my next piece of advice is always to start small and choose a problem to solve that's based on your lived experience. And by that, I mean something that you personally can relate to, or it doesn't have to be something that you've personally experienced, but it could be within your immediate sphere. So it could be like a family business problem or something like that, but something that you can sort of draw on, because by doing that, I think your likelihood of success is a lot better. You're going to resonate better with your customers. You're going to feel more authentic. Your stories are going to feel more real, etc. And I think that while you're learning all the other things that comes with being a business, that there is something that you don't have to worry about.
Well, so Arkahna isn't your first business, but what did you learn from the other ones?
That's a really interesting question. So I've had different types of businesses. So if I think about other startups that I've had, my biggest bit of learning from there is, and this is something I tell people all the time, is when you are choosing founders, so people that you're going to do your business with, and you're never going to do it by yourself. There's always going to be other people that have skills that you don't have that you're going to need to bring along the journey with you. And so my number one piece of advice there is choose founders that you are aligned with from a values perspective, because eventually the shine and the excitement of what you're going out to do will wear off. That's inevitable. So when you're planning the next phase or having to pivot or having to consolidate, etc., what you end up falling back on is your core values. And if they aren't aligned, you will have so much friction. And then a lot of early stage businesses are typically 50-50 partnerships or something similar. And then it's quite a recipe for disaster at that point. That also leads on to my next piece of advice, which is, if it's your idea, ideally don't have a 50-50 partnership, because somebody needs to be on the hook for what is being delivered, and has to be able to make the ultimate decision if it gets down to it. Though there are lots of successful businesses that are more like 50-50, like Atlassian comes to mind. I assume that's more like 50-50 with the co-CEO model. But they have, well, from the outside looking in, they do have very clear delineation of responsibility. So that's also helps in that regard.
Looks like that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for coming on this show and sharing your story. Best of luck with the future.
No problems at all, Liam, and thanks for having me. I appreciate it.